I'm Milton Schoen, and welcome to America Salutes. Today we have our guest, Annette Kuiper, who is the Director of Military Outreach for the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs. Welcome.
Thank you, Milt. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, Annette. Why don't you just start out by telling our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Well, I joined the Department of Military Affairs about 5 years ago, and I was a volunteer with the Minnesota National Guard when my son deployed with the Red Bulls Battalion, and began to see that there was a need to help service members, veterans, and their families across the state.
And that was at a time where we had large deployments, and I know we've had 3 very large deployments, and so there was we had groups of 2,600 troops coming back from the conflict at a time.
Yes, and I was brought on as Director of Military Outreach. It's a very unique position. I'm a civilian on the Adjutant General's staff, and I'm part of his strategic outreach team that takes a look at how can we ensure that we are synchronized in efforts to support service members, veterans, and military families. And I also, part of my role is to oversee Minnesota's Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program.
Very good. And speaking of that, do you want to tell our viewers a little bit about Beyond the Yellow Ribbon?
Yes, Beyond the Yellow Ribbon really started in 2008 as an opportunity for communities and companies to synchronize their efforts and their resources to support service members who are part of the deployment cycle. Well, when we started the program, it really became quite apparent that this could help any veteran of any age in helping to synchronize communities to support them throughout all of Minnesota. So committees are formed that are made up of key areas within each community of law enforcement, city leadership, social services, and we have 95 of those networks across the state currently.
Very good. And we've seen a change because we've gone from periods of mass deployments of 2,600 people that we've had, like I think at least 3 times, to smaller deployments, but we still have deployments, and you made the point earlier that there are deployments that are going to be going forward for members in our state.
Yes, we continue to see deployments, again, just the small numbers. However, they're not ending anytime soon. So we definitely have a great process set up to support any family during deployment. We also are seeing a number of service members returning to their home state after being in active duty. So we want to connect them to these community networks to help with employment, to help with connect them with social services, to make sure their children are supported in our school districts across the state.
And you deal with the entire state. So are there any differences or any challenges that you might face dealing with greater Minnesota as opposed to dealing with people in the metropolitan Twin Cities?
Definitely. We've had to really work harder in the greater Minnesota to make sure that we've connected all those resources. And many times it's resources within communities or a church or a synagogue that enables us to reach out and meet the needs of our service members or veterans throughout greater Minnesota. In 61 of our 95 Yellow Ribbon networks, we've been able to place a unit representative from the local Minnesota National Guard. This enables us to build a relationship with the community, as well as make sure that our service members, that the committees know the needs of our service members all across the state.
And oftentimes the issues are related to family. When someone is deployed, all of a sudden the family is separated, and there are issues of maintaining the household, and maybe you can speak to that a little bit, and also in some cases income, as somebody made more money full-time working in the private sector as opposed to being deployed.
Yeah, the top 3 issues we're definitely seeing is support to family, just helping with snow shoveling or lawn care or getting kids to sporting events when they become a single parent due to a deployment, employment when the service member returns, and lastly, financial literacy. So we turn to our key support partners in the community, our Yellow Ribbon companies such as Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, Highway Federal Credit Union, who offer financial literacy courses and people willing to sit down with our service members and their families to work out a budget and their financial needs.
Very good. And when it comes to finances, one of the issues that I've seen when I've been at Fort McCoy or Camp Shelby, working with troops as they come back, is employment. Because oftentimes people come back, they may be underemployed or they may be working part-time, and they want to get something more challenging, and after maturing during deployment, they're ready for new endeavors. So could you speak to that, please?
Yes, here in Minnesota we have some really exciting things happening on the veteran and service member employment front. We have several initiatives going on. For example, the Minneapolis Yellow Ribbon Network, their business subcommittee, is working on training for HR hiring managers on the value of hiring a veteran. They're working on matching service members and veteran job seekers up with mentors in the industry that they're interested in at the Minneapolis Workforce Center. And we're hoping to take this broader throughout all of Minnesota, but we're focusing on Minneapolis right now to get the process really tight. We have 42 yellow ribbon companies, and we have a partnership with the Minnesota Chamber. So we are working on a standard operating procedure for any service member that has returned from a deployment to help them match them with a mentor per industry that can sit with them and do interview prep, resume review, and help them network within the industry they're interested in.
Mm-hmm. And it's a challenge in that we've seen this economic cycle go back and forth. And I know when we had the first group come back in 2007, fortunately the economy was in pretty good shape then, although it rapidly changed. But that has some impact on people who are deployed and people once they've come back and being able to make it in our workforce.
Absolutely. What we're seeing all around is they're having some difficulty translating their skill set. We had a young captain who was said on his resume that he worked in a mail room when actually he had to take a huge pile of backlogged mail and turn it into a process so people received their care packages within a short period of time. And he took a team of 10 people to be able to do that. But on his resume, he said he worked in a mail room. So we're helping those service members with how they can translate their experiences that they've gained during the deployment or even just in their service to the workplace.
Very good. And it's challenging getting all the information that we can into this 15-minute segment that we're doing. But it sounds as though the work of supporting our military, whether they've been deployed or whether they're back, is not a cookie-cutter approach, that you're trying to meet the needs of individuals, and that oftentimes changes.
Absolutely, and that's why our community networks are so important. They know what the needs are within their community, and they partner with their local county veteran service officer, their local veteran employment rep at our workforce center, their local family assistance center people, and their local unit rep to identify what are the needs unique in that community, and then what are the resources that we can match to meet those needs. It is actually becoming a model for the nation. We have shared this with several other states who are modeling it, and they're seeing the success that we've had here in Minnesota by synchronizing our efforts and everyone working together.
And today we have a challenge that if we went back to World War II, basically everybody was healthy, served. We had substantial service in Korea, significantly higher service in Vietnam. And then as we've moved forward, we've had a much smaller military and we've had multiple deployments. So is one of the issues in terms of employment for these members the fact that some of our employers are not used to dealing with veterans the way they once were? That
is very true. That's why we offer Department of Labor, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, Department of Veterans Affairs here in Minnesota, and myself, we offer a Leaders in Veteran Employment seminar for the HR community. And it's an opportunity to train them on the value of hiring a veteran, but also to shed any misconceptions they have about hiring somebody who has been in a deployment, and encouraging them to hire Guard and Reserve, even though they might be gone 2 weeks in the summer, they're still a valuable employee and a valuable leader within their organization. So we're working on making sure that we can train the HR community and hiring managers on the value of hiring that veteran that has those great leadership experiences.
And so part of this is educating the employer that people serving in the military are focused on accomplishing a mission and overcoming the obstacles. So they have the problem-solving skills that many of our employers are looking for today.
Absolutely. Every single time that we have matched an employer to a service member during a reintegration weekend or at a Minnesota Workforce Center, they go back to their employer and say, we need more of them. We need more of that kind of worker in our place. So it really works to our benefit when we've connected them. But we're trying to do it from a twofold approach. If we can train the hiring manager and the HR manager, and we can train the service member to be able to talk about their experiences, to translate it well in the resume, we can meet halfway in the middle. And our 42 yellow ribbon companies that we have that have made commitments to our service members and veterans and military families within Minnesota are groups of interested companies that have come together to help us create some of these processes.
And our veterans have dealt with issues of logistics, is one of the big things one deals with when one's deployed, of making sure that you have the resources to operate and operating with whatever set of resources you have, and operating under varied conditions, which is essentially what both the public and the private sector wind up dealing with, because they're not dealing with a static situation.
Absolutely. Our skilled veteran leaders that have served, they can add so much value to a workplace. Leadership, the ability to be flexible, the ability to be calm in a crisis, the ability to think forward and put a plan in place and get processes in place. They have all those skill sets. Even at the lowest levels within the military, they develop those skill sets. And we want to build on that and bring that talent back to Minnesota.
Well, that's great. And it's about giving people the opportunity to contribute, because, as you were saying, some of these skills are not recognized readily and by private employers, because sometimes the military skills don't match up exactly with the credentialing of the private sector. So in our last minute, what would you like to leave our viewers with in terms of information about your work?
Well, I definitely would encourage any veteran or service member that is looking for work to connect at their workforce center, their local workforce center, and connect with a veteran employment rep. They know about all these great employment initiatives we have going on in the state. Number two, at our website, beyondtheyellowribbon.org, we have a wonderful newsletter for job seekers, for military families. This is the one-stop place where they can gain some resources, where they can get a monthly newsletter that talks about all the things our Yellow Ribbon networks are doing. I would also encourage them, they can join a Yellow Ribbon network within their own community and help volunteer and be with like-minded people. And also, Yellow Ribbon Network can help connect them to resources.
Very good. Well, Annette, I want to thank you for this conversation and for sharing the information about the work that you do with our Guard and Reserve members and active duty members who have deployed and come back to our state. And I want to wish you well in your work in the days ahead.
Thank you.
Okay. And for America Salutes, this is Milton Schoen, and we will be returning soon with our next segment.